And I remember that the words that were coming to mind was infinite freedom. And I remember thinking, infinite is not even remotely a big enough word to describe the amount of freedom and liberation that I had felt during that ceremony.
Welcome to Still In It, 5-MeO DMT Stories. I'm your host, Arthur. Whether you're curious, preparing for your own journey, or reflecting on past experiences, we hope these stories resonate, inform, and inspire. Please enjoy today's episode.
This podcast is brought to you by Enfold, offering the world's most comprehensive 5-MeO DMT program. To learn more, visit enfold.org. That's enfold.org, or click on the link in the show notes.
Okay, well, today on the podcast, I am joined for a second time by MJ, who resides in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, works as a leadership coach and facilitator. And MJ, hopefully it goes without saying, but it's a pleasure to see you again and have you back on the podcast today. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be there, and I'm so happy just to basically have the chance to have a conversation with you, Arthur.
Yeah,
this brings
likewise.
me back to, what I've been through, what we've been through together.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were chatting a bit before we hit the record button, but you were at the very first intensive that I ever co-facilitated with Enfold. So you'll always have a very special place in my life and heart. And yeah, especially grateful to have you on the podcast today. So
Same.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so to further set the stage for perhaps people that haven't heard your first podcast, you first came to Enfold in July of 2023, back in the previous 3-day format, and then rejoined us for our first Awakening to Life 5-day format in August of 2024. And perhaps a good place to start would be to hear from you in terms of what brought you back the second time in August of last year.
It was a profound knowing. I actually left the first time, and I distinctively remember I was about to step into my car, and I looked at Steve and I said, "We're going to see each other again." I knew the first time that I left that I would be coming back. And it was so obvious to me, I never questioned it. So I left the first time, it was July, and then by the time it was January, I was already looking at new dates and planning what would work well for me, and it was an obvious thing. Yeah. I just had this sense that my work was not finished. I couldn't explain it. I just knew.
Yeah, sometimes there's just this deep knowing, and I think 5-MeO more than any other medicine, sometimes or oftentimes the intelligence comes in a wordless way, a deep somatic knowing. And
Totally. Yeah. And I wasn't privy to this type of knowing and this type of voice that I was hearing or sensing or feeling before in my life. So it was a bit awkward, or it was a bit like new to me to just have this clear sense. But I've learned since to listen to that knowing and to honor it, for sure. It's been part of the big learnings, for sure.
Yeah. I certainly want to come back to that.
Yeah.
But just to keep things somewhat chronological, I'd love to hear what you recall experiencing and taking away from that first experience at Enfold in July of 2023. And as I recall, there was some lessons and experiences around the imprint of unconditional love. So would love to hear any more about that you're willing to share, anything you can recall.
Yeah. Definitely in my first ceremony, through the presence of Austin in particular, and the way she was able to facilitate and hold the space for me, Yeah, definitely felt for the first time in my life what truly felt like unconditional love. And so that was, I know, some sort of a big awakening in itself, to know that that exists and what that feels like. The other big thing that I remember about my first time, because I haven't re-listened to that first podcast, so it's interesting for me to like, maybe I'll listen to it after and see what the difference between the two is. But one thing I think that the first time for me was also about the acknowledgement that I have an ego, and um, the experience in the ceremony the first time was a lot of beautiful somatic openings that I was feeling in my body, and also coming down or coming back from the high of the medicine, in a way where the thoughts that were in my head was, I quote unquote, I didn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept hearing this word, or hearing myself kind of like doubt or struggle to really believe that, whatever that means, I got there. That I
Mm-hmm.
was, in other words, that I was really deeply able to let go and surrender to the medicine. Um, what was really interesting is that I later, a few days later, and the next day actually, realized that I did get there. Something in me remembered that I got there. And I also had testimonies from Stephen Austin that were saying, well, your eyes were wide open and you were looking up and you physically seemed like you were in such an awe. And I had no recollection of this. And that was like really, really interesting to me, to just realize that my ego was trying to protect me by telling me, you didn't get there, this is not for, maybe this is not for you, you're not able to. There were like these voices in my head trying to make me believe basically that this wasn't for me, or that it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like the first awareness of like, oh, okay, so these parts, right, if you know IFS, these parts that are in my head, these protectors that are telling me certain things, um, those are not who I am, and
Mm-hmm.
they're telling a story to make me believe something. And so that was a huge piece of awakening, to understand and to really feel what this ego does,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, fascinating it sounds like, to get a clearer picture of the architecture, the dimensions of the ego, and in that ego, what we call ego whiplash, and that contraction around a big experience. And so,
Yes.
yeah, interesting. Did you find that you were able to continue working with the identification of those parts afterwards? Or, yeah, just curious if that has informed later work, or if you've noticed some growth around those parts since becoming aware of them.
Yeah, that the understanding of these parts in IFS terms, I became a bit more educated in the IFS type of vocabulary. Um, have become, have befriended them, right? And it's become a language and a tool that I can now, is very accessible, and I can now use in order to understand what's going on, with me when I go through difficult moments in my life, or reactive patterns that are like surprising to me. And it's become quite a tool, to help me, yeah, figure myself out, I guess, in some way, and feel myself. Um, and maybe I don't want to jump too far ahead, but definitely it's been a big part of my second experience at Enfold. The second time around, the ego whiplash lasted for many weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a challenge also. It's a different story.
And yeah, and would love to hear more about
Hmm.
that different second story. And for a bit of context, funny, I think in one of our follow-up conversations, either by text or by phone, Steve Austin and I couldn't help but offer that, you took a pretty interesting route to and from Enfold the second time, in that you drove from Montreal
Yeah.
to British Columbia.
Yes.
And in some ways, I'm sure that provided a very beautiful journey, but it's also doing integration on hard mode, in that you don't have the familiar comfort and context of home. And so if I recall correctly, that some of that post work started on that drive, if I'm assuming correctly. And so
Yes.
now that we've laid the groundwork for that, I'd love to hear more about what that was like for you.
Well, actually, it's interesting because the first year I drove, and the first year was a beautiful experience driving. It was going there was like a full week of being by myself, with no screens. And it was a beautiful way to kind of, it was very meditative. Like it's a big, long meditation, basically. So the first time, and also I'd never done it before. So it was discovering such beautiful parts of the country and coming back through the US and just beautiful scenery. So the second time I went to Enfold, I just thought I'll just do the same thing. But the experience was definitely not the same. And so going there was really difficult. And I remember starting from Montreal and crossing Ontario, just above, north of the lakes, and just having a really, really hard time. Like I remember, I think I was listening to an audiobook, maybe of IFS, Internal Family Systems, just, I guess, trying to get into the work, but feeling so much sadness, so much grief, so much, and then also realizing, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? I was just feeling very confused about what was going on. And so I did 3-4 days of that and it was really, really painful. A lot of crying by myself in the car and not really understand what the hell was going on. And I remember what really had a big impact is that when I got to Winnipeg, you and I were scheduled to have a call as part of the regular programming. We had a call, a preparation call. And I remember I was sitting, what's the name of that park in Winnipeg? Forks? The Forks Park where the river is?
Yeah, Forks, River at the Forks,
Yes,
or
something like that.
people who know Winnipeg will know what we're talking
Yes.
about.
And I'm sitting in that park and I have my laptop and I open my laptop and you come on screen. I've never met you before, or maybe we've seen each other in calls, but I'm already crying. I'm just bawling. and you're and I don't and I'm telling you, like, I don't understand what's going on, And you had such a beautiful way of just holding the space for that, and just, I think, not really saying much at the beginning and just letting me be there. And I remember after a while you said, what you're doing right now is kind of like a pilgrimage. You said that word. And it just dawned on me. And later on, like after we ended the call, I just looked up, what is a pilgrimage? Looked up what does that mean? And I was like, oh, there's a lot of suffering involved in a pilgrimage, so much happens before. And it just dawned on me, oh, that's what's happening. And it just put such a word that made so much sense for me. And it was just a beginning of me kind of being able to let go and being like, well, if this is what's happening, then I'm going to suffer and I'm going to surrender to the suffering, and I'm just going to cry the whole way there, And it was just so liberating to kind of like see it that way and not feel weird or awkward about it. So thank you again for that. And it was weird in that moment. I don't know if you remember, but you had been in Winnipeg a couple of days or the week before.
Yeah, I was going to mention it. It was definitely, it felt like a moment of serendipity, synchronicity, where I had visited Winnipeg for the first time like a week prior, and as soon as you came on screen, I was like, Wait, are you at the Forks? I had almost literally been in that exact spot like 3, 4 days prior. I had just gotten home, so
And then I was
something
telling you, I just
magical
had
going on.
fish tacos for lunch at those at
Yeah,
a bunch of. It's like, oh my god, I had the same fish tacos.
several times. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So anyway,
yeah.
so yeah, that was that's driving was an experience. It was definitely part of the voyage for sure. And I think that, now looking back, I think that driving was part of the work that was happening before and after my time physically at Enfold. For
Hmm.
sure. A lot of work was happening there for sure.
Yeah, before we started recording, you mentioned this awareness of what our good friend Lana at Modern Psychedelics calls the pre-work, the work that
Yeah.
starts the ceremony before the ceremony. There's a
Yeah.
bit of a cliche in the psychedelic space, but it's cliche because it's true, and people say that the ceremony starts before the ceremony. And so, yeah, how did you know that was happening, and how is that showing up for you? Of course, you've started to describe it, but
I
yeah,
had
is
no
there
idea
any?
this was happening, but I understood what was happening months later after I came back and I heard that podcast from Lana. I was not educated on the possibility that might happen. But now that I look back at it, I think it started even months before that. I remember at the beginning of the summer, um, in May, I think it was. I had I've always had this pattern in my life. Every year at the beginning of the summer, since I've been a child, I dread the summer because the summer for me means taking off some layers of clothing and showing your
Mm-hmm,
body more,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and becoming very self conscious at the beginning of summer. And around May, something came over me. And I just decided that I had enough. It was almost somatic, it was energetic. I had enough of feeling this way. And I remember thinking it makes no sense that I just went to Enfold last year and I'm going back for this incredible experience and this all these learnings and this awareness that's growing and that I'm still feeling this way this year. And it was something came over me. It was so strange for me, but I just cut off sugar. I just completely started eating well.
mm,
I stopped drinking alcohol. I started exercising a lot more. And this was kind of like an energetic kind of push or pull that I just needed to do this. And this is very unlike me to like be that drastic and these kinds of mechanisms. But and it wasn't so much, probably on the surface, something was around like feeling better in my body and shedding some weight a little bit more. But it felt like it was a deeper energy than that. It was about
mm-hmm,
loving myself and feeling that I don't have to feel this way. I can just
mm-hmm,
love myself through nourishing my body better and through exercising more. And I don't have to be stuck in this pattern and go through this again this year. And it was just, it just felt really unlike me, that it just came over me like, I don't know. It was really, really weird. So now looking back, I think that that was also part of the work.
mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, taking kind of matters into your own hands and not feeling like you have to wait
Yeah.
for the intensive, not have to wait for the ceremony. Like I can start loving myself whenever I feel like it, and
Yeah.
who knows, maybe that was in part informed by this unconditional love piece that came up the first time. Doesn't really matter, but that's really, really cool to know.
It
Yeah,
was
and of
definitely a
course,
shift. Yeah, I think yeah, it's probably now that you say it, it kind of resonates for me. Like, yeah, I don't, but it's also more like I don't have to feel this way.
hmm,
Like I can do something.
yeah,
I'm not a victim to feeling this
yeah,
way. I'm not powerless.
yeah.
You know.
Self-resourcing. Yeah,
Yes.
love it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so you make the pilgrimage to Enfold for the second time.
Yeah.
Driving the second time, I didn't realize you had driven the first time. I think that's amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, this is, of course, a very broad question, but how was the second visit to Enfold for you? What did you experience there while on intensive? And then we can, of course, talk about the process afterwards as
Yeah.
the work continued.
Yeah. When I got there, it was a very different experience because I had just been through this drive where I was kind of like still a little shaken by what the hell had just happened over this drive, you know? So I was showing up. It was a mix of, holy shit, what's going to happen? What does this mean? And a new sense of nervousness, although like part of me was feeling calm because I had been here before, and this fear that I felt the first time and this nervousness that I think everybody feels like was no longer there. But then what did that mean? You know, this drive and this pilgrimage and this like shedding of all these emotions. How does that inform what's about to happen? What does it mean? You know, so kind of a nervousness around that. And also just a beautiful sense of like coming home in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that place. I'm like, it's making me emotional just thinking about that moment. It's like driving into that place and seeing Steve and Austin and just smelling the air and seeing the place and seeing the scenery and being in the house. It just felt like I was home. Yeah. It was a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful feeling. And yeah, meeting a whole new group, you know, a whole new group of people. This time was for 5 days. I remember at the beginning, I was like the only person out of the group that it was my second time. Everybody else was there for their first time. So I was kind of feeling, you know, a mix of um, big sister energy and
Mm-hmm.
also,
I can feel that. Yeah.
and also just really wanting to be in my own thing because I can have a pattern of like really wanting to like take care of everybody and just reminding myself that I need to be here for myself also. But instantly feeling at ease with the group that was there. It was such a special group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I was as distressed as I felt on the drive there. I felt perfectly at ease and in the moment and in beautiful presence and every day. I was just, let's just, I was completely open. Just tell me where to be, where to go. And I'm just here for it. I'm here for all of it. So that
Mm-hmm.
was such a beautiful feeling to have also, to be
Yeah.
completely in trust.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Is there a moment or moments that you recall where, it sounds like the first time a big realization for you was around the ego whiplash and
Hmm.
identifying seeing in higher definition, the parts of the ego and parts within yourself. Do you remember any similar moments during the second visit where maybe there was something that happened that led to this new chapter of realization, or anything that stands out to you throughout the second journey that was particularly significant?
Yeah.
Um, mm-hmm.
Um, I think in my second, I was like much more open and much more. I had already a level of letting go and of surrendering that was like way different, and I could feel it even the days leading up to this ceremony. But what stands out to me when I hear you ask this question is that what happened in the ceremony. If I can go into that.
Please do.
Um, I remember the first dose that I took. I remember, I think I stayed seated. I didn't completely lie down. And I remember I don't remember a whole lot of what happened, but I remember coming back, coming to, and the first words that I could say, I looked at Steve and I said, this was a meeting. This was a meeting with the resistance.
Hmm.
this was kind of like a handshake. It's like I was face to face with the resistance of my ego. I didn't have any pictures or any voices or any images. It was a deep knowing and sensation that that was a handshake. Um, and then I did another dose after that, which I don't completely remember. But the last dose that I did, what I do remember is when I came to, I remember saying, I don't know what happened. I remember the feeling that it was as if I was coming back from anesthesia, where I had no awareness of what had just, and I had this feeling, and I just told Steve, I don't know what happened. And then I heard, it's funny because I was saying things and hearing myself say things at the same time. And I heard myself say, that's okay. I don't need to know. And then it just dawned on me, like this deep thing came over me. And I was like, holy shit, I don't need to know anything. And I didn't understand what that meant. I was just hearing myself say these words and have a deep, profound sensation that these words were true and they were resonating inside of me. Like another part of me was like, why are you saying it? Like, what does that mean? Like, the other part of me was like, who cares? You know? And I just remember telling Steve, like, and then I just became completely elated. I was like, holy shit, like, I don't need to know. And then I was like, I don't need to know anything. And then it was, I never needed to know anything. What was I trying to know this whole time? And it just, I was completely in this feeling of elation, not completely comprehending in this brain of mine, like what that was about. But I just remembered thinking, oh yeah. And then I said, I'm done. I'm done. And I remember I was doing this sign, like, I'm complete. I'm complete. I'm done. I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'm convinced that I'm done. And that was like a huge moment for me because the first year I was struggling. Am I done? Did I get there? Did I, it was such a huge struggle. And this time there was a deep knowing, like, it's done. And obviously in that ceremony, there was also in between doses, a lot of somatic releasing, a lot of tears, a lot of Austin holding me. I remember like a mother would hold a baby. I felt like I was a baby again. A lot of sadness coming out. I remember going towards Steve also, which was very, the connection with Austin had been established in the first ceremony. Steve being a male figure was like, I hadn't gotten there yet with him, but I remember in that second year also going towards him and he held me. And I remember looking at him in his eyes and saying, like, I'm really, really trying. This is hard. But like as if I was taking his embrace, and that was so significant for me. So yeah, it just felt like the most beautiful thing ever. But again, my brain in that moment didn't really comprehend what the hell had just happened. The other thing that I remember is that night, my brain in my sleep, I just distinctly remember this, my brain as an organ of my body was trying to put words on what I had experienced. And I remember the thoughts coming into my, like, what is the word? How can you describe that sensation that you had during ceremony? And I remember that the words that were coming to mind was infinite freedom. And I remember thinking, infinite is not even remotely a big enough word to describe the amount of freedom and liberation that I had felt during that ceremony. And that kind of like was imprinted in my body, this feeling of total let go, this feeling of total openness. And I later came to realize the next day I was able to put the words on it, and I said, I think I died. I
Mm.
died. I
Mm.
was completely, there was, I was nowhere. I was no one. There was no time. I remember thinking I was my soul. That's what happened.
Mm.
And that's a big fucking deal, Arthur.
It, it's not a small deal.
It's not a small deal. And I remember,
Yeah.
like, I still, like, the next day, still struggling. I remember talking to my roommate, and the words I was still, the only thing I was saying was like, it was so profound. It was, oh my, like, it was so, and tears were rolling down my eyes. And I was like, it just was the most profound thing, that I ever had felt or been through. It was just profound that there was no word that would ever do it justice.
Mm.
And so that was my second ceremony, which
Mm.
was, and then a couple of days after, which were completely beautiful. And now I put these, like, the spiritual awakening. It was a total moment of the thing that's indescribable, that doesn't have any words. I don't know how
Yeah.
to name it.
Yeah. I mean, if I may indulge myself just for a brief moment as you're speaking, I think there's a line from the Christian mystics, the Desert Fathers, and I hope I'm getting this right, but the
Hmm.
line is something like, "The peace that passeth all understanding." It's like,
Yeah,
I don't need to know. We're never gonna know. I can't put this into words. Infinite freedom is just scratching the surface, but I
yeah,
think you've done a beautiful job of doing your best to describe it. So
yeah,
yeah,
yes. And I can,
I can feel it from you. So
yeah, just feeling like, and it's imprinted. Like, I can't say that I've felt that exact thing, whatever that is, since, but it's definitely left an imprint in me, for
hmm.
sure, that I can go back to.
Yeah,
You
beautiful.
know. That's what
When
they
you know, you know. Yeah. And some things you just don't need to know. So,
Yeah,
but when
exactly.
you know, you know. Yeah, cool, to say the least. Um, and of course, I'd be remiss without asking you. You had mentioned that it hasn't been all kittens and rainbows, and that
No.
in the past year or so, it's led to some challenge. And yeah, I'd love to hear you share about that. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Like, how has it been challenging for you lately?
In so many ways. We're recording this. It's July 2025, so it's almost a year, and I'm still not sure if I don't know if I'll ever be sure that I've fully integrated. Maybe I won't. Um, it's been challenging in so many different ways. And it's been phases, like coming back, the ride back to Montreal in the car was okay. That's a good word.
You made it.
It's like, I think I was listening to like audiobooks and like audio shanti and that kind of thing. I think as part of my brain still was struggling to understand what had happened. And I think that's a total normal human thing also, to be like, what was that? Um, but I was alone in my car for like 7 days, and saw beautiful sceneries. But I was alone a lot in my own bubble, not really interacting with a lot of the world. And because I'm this very intense traveler, and this kind of like pilgrimage, what I do when I do this traveling is that I actually like sleep in my car. Like, I don't I don't like
Hmm.
to go in and find like what hotel rooms are available, or where I'm going to stop, or do I need to reserve. And I just have this SUV, and I slept in the back of my car. And so it's very isolated kind of trip. And I came back to Montreal, and I was feeling kind of okay. I think I was trying to like make myself believe that I was okay, but in hindsight, I was feeling a bit off. But it's as if I didn't want to believe it, because like, why? The first time I came back from Enfold, like I had what a lot of people have, which is elation and total openness and total like a sense of peace that like just stays with you. And so the second time coming back, I wasn't totally feeling that, but I just really wanted to believe that, that was going to be the case. And I remember this thought came into my head that like I might need an integration coach out of the blue. And I had heard the name of this integration coach here in Montreal called Andrew Rose.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how, but I decided to, or why, but I decided to look him up, and I sent him an email. And I remember him saying like, I have some free time next week, but I also have an opening tomorrow if ever it's urgent. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't feel it's urgent, but let me take that one the next day. And so booked a meeting, but that same day, that night, we had our first integration call. The whole group, after um, uh, some time at Enfold, gets together, and we kind of like a week later, we debrief, right? And we integrate together. And I just remember getting on that call on Zoom, and everybody is going like, taking a turn to say how they feel and how they've landed back in their lives. And people are all saying like, oh my God, I feel so good, and such awareness now, and such beautiful, beautiful things that they were saying. And this whole time I'm bawling. I don't know, something got over me, and I'm just crying my face off, not understanding what's going on with me. And my turn comes, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I'm sure a lot more happened than that, but that's what I can remember. So the next day I have this call with Andrew, who's a very well-known integration coach in this space and very well respected. And I just showed up at his place just crying. And I just remember him saying, okay, this is a thing. This is called ego whiplash. Some people go through it. It's a thing, and I just remember feeling so reassured that somebody knew. And so I began this relationship with Andrew that is still to this day supporting me to integrate. And then there were phases also mixed into that where like obviously joy and elation of what had happened, because I still had memories of where I had been, although it's not a place, but and just those memories that was coming back to me. And I remember at some like just trying to wrap my brain around what does this mean, and becoming very interested in spirituality and like how do you people talk about that, and what are the concepts around that, and what is a soul, and what is, I remember asking Andrew. I had been wrestling with this in my mind, and I remember showing up to our coaching session, and I said, Andrew, like when I was in ceremony, was I, like, it's semantics, but was I with God? Was I in God? Or was I God? Like, which one of the three? And I'll always remember he said, it's all three at the same time. Like this. And I remember saying like, okay, so I can say like, it's like okay to say that I was God. And he said, as long as that's not the only thing you're saying, it's fine.
Yeah.
So just, a lot of like newfound knowledge, awareness of this realm, of this spiritual realm that I'm part of, that my life is part of. And like a child learning what this is, and in awe and curiosity and in deep, deep interest. following a knowing, following like a deep intuition that, holy shit, like this is a thing.
Yeah. Does it feel like, to sum that up in some ways, that it has led to some profound ontological shifts for you in terms of how you view and perceive and understand reality?
Yes. Yeah. I remember part of the struggle also for me is like when I became aware of all this, is also what comes with that is the total paradox of becoming aware of the world that we live in, knowing that this exists, seeing what's going on in the news, and seeing like all of us play this game, quote unquote, and being in this world that we live in this culture, and doing the things that we do that are good or bad for the environment, the economy, this, and just being like, what the hell are we doing? Holy shit, this is all wrong, and just being like, what? And that's something that I've also is I think part of a learning of awakening, is being able to hold this deep paradox, right? Like
Yeah.
reality is not one or the other. It's not just like God and non-duality. It's also being able to hold that the two are true,
Yeah.
and learning how to be in the world knowing these things.
Yeah. It reminds me of the title of a great Jack Kornfield book, which is After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. How do we take these big non-dual experiences and bring them back into a world that can be really hard and very dualistic? And that's where the work lies. Yeah, it's easy to be up here, or it
Yeah.
can comparatively feel easy. The
Yes.
real work is down here.
And that's
And
part of the struggle of integration also for me, is like I have to admit, some parts of me, like I want to go back there. This was like this was like the shit, you know what I mean? Like so sometimes doing things like holotropic breath work, where or just regular breath work to get to these states of like consciousness, or nothing is ever going to come close, but like just there's a struggle with that also. It's like you kind of like I kind of like want to feel that again, and at the beginning, in the first couple of months, there are many beautiful things also throughout that whole those hardships, feeling much more open, feeling much more aware, self-aware, feeling much more at peace and beautiful times, feeling in awe of like synchronicities that were happening in my life. Just so much beauty also in that phase, in that past year. But it also comes with this kind of like sometimes pendulum effect, right? If you're going to go that high, let yourself feel that, yeah, there's going to be a swing back.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that this is not passive work. This is an active process, not just
Yes.
something that we take and let the work happen. It's like, yeah, it will ask things of us that we need to be prepared to engage in. And I think it's always at the end of the process for our growing. But yeah, this is not something that happens overnight, or
Yeah.
typically through a totally smooth process. As you say, like there will be moments of joy, playfulness, elation, ecstasy, maybe like the heights of bliss and realization, but then we're still rooted to the earth and this earthly world. And yeah, it's not always easy. Yeah,
It's not a walk in the park, Arthur.
it's not even close.
Awakening
Yeah.
is
It's
not a
not
walk
it's
in
not
the
a drive across the country, yeah.
park.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but but that being said, uh, it's been one of the hardest years in my life, because so much material has come up for me to work on, and I've done a lot of work, you know. And I'm so grateful that I had help doing that work. And I think for anybody that's listening to this and that's relating, it's really important to seek the help. like it's a thing. And so, like there's,
Mm-hmm.
if that resonates with you, it's like there are people that can help you with it. And it's, as much as it's one of the hardest years in my life, it's, I can also confidently and honestly say it's one of the most beautiful years of my life. So it's hard work, but you have to lean into it. And if this, I just had a deep sense that, okay, I wasn't expecting this after, going back for a second time. I was expecting only the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if this is the work that's being presented to me, I decided, and it was, I don't think I even decided. It was obvious to me that I had to lean into it, and that this was the chance of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I can't not do this work. I have to, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. And yeah, really admire and respect your commitment to the process, and yeah,
Yeah.
just not turning away from the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fairly good place to ask what will be my final question.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to enter an elevator with somebody, you're going from the 30th floor to the first floor, so you've got a little bit of time, maybe a minute, and somebody were to ask you who didn't know you, how has this whole process changed you? What would you say?
I mean, it is tough, Arthur, but um, a few things. I am now, I have this sense that I'm deeply connected to myself, where maybe in the past I felt disconnected. I don't think I would have put these words on it 5 years ago, but now that I know what I know, um, I had a feeling 5 years ago that I was living in my head. I don't think I felt my body. Now I deeply feel my body. I have this, I don't want to call it a superpower, but because it sounds not very humble, but I have this like really heightened sensitivity. I sense things, I feel things, I feel my own energy. I I have a sense of awareness of myself that I didn't even dream that was possible of having. Um, and I have this way of relating to the world that's completely different. I had this, like, I remember thinking when I came back the second time, I was thinking, it's so weird. Like everything's the same and nothing is the same at the
Hmm.
same time. And
Wow.
it's really hard to describe. But in behavioral terms, I'm more open, I'm more aware, I'm much more calm. I'm aware of the patterns. I still have an ego. I still have these parts that are talking to me, but I tend to be more aware of them as it's happening. And have this heightened capacity now to, um, how should I say, figure out new ways, new patterns. It's
Mm-hmm.
true what they say that like neural pathways open up and there's like new paths. Like I definitely sense that I have new ways of showing up, that are sometimes not always like Buddha-esque. But for me, these new ways are, really good for me. I can express myself a lot more. I was very shut down, I think, before. I'm much more expressive. I'm much more um, aware, is the word I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's meaningful for people that will listen. But
I'm confident that it will absolutely be meaningful. Yeah. Yeah. Well, MJ, yeah, thank you again so much for taking the time, and look forward to the next time we can connect, whether that's on a community call
mm,
or otherwise. Who knows? I'll be glad to see you then. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you so much for proposing this. It's been a great to, yeah, be able to tell that story. It's not something that I talk about. in this way, in this format, in this, and it's like helping me also to integrate different parts of it in a new way. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to hear it.